My connections to the dock is from my forefathers who had the same name, George Baker. I'm George Baker the seventh. My son is George Baker the eighth, and we carried on from father to son. My connection with the docks is really pilotage, waterage, lighterage, that type of thing. Not as a docker or a stevedore, and also work for ourselves. And that was one of the failings. Because we worked for ourselves, we never got no compensation or anything at all when the docks folded up. When they folded up, when the Rochdale report came through, the large Rochdale report over the strikes and over the bad handling of the cargoes in the docks for 6 and 8 weeks at a time, they decided to close the docks. There's nothing to do with anybody else. It was just the bloody strong unions, as far as I was concerned. Anyway, I was put out of a job. Started in the docks. I started rowing men across on the Church Hole, which is the back of the Mayfair, by the side of the Mayfair pub, when I was 12 and 13. In fact, I never even got a what's name certificate, for a school leaving certificate. I was working at 13, and one day I was running a ship that was on Canada Boys, and I was, rowing the men back and forth from the quay to the buoys, to the ship on the buoys. They used to put ships in the middle of the docks then, the Canada dock. And as I was rowing them across, I had 8 men in a boat, and it's quite heavy for a boy of 14. And I was rowing there, and someone said it was the 4th of June. And I said, "What, today?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Sod this, is my birthday." He said, "Well, bloody well stop it," one of the dockers did. So I took the boat ashore, tied it up, phoned my dad I wasn't going to work anymore, and walked away. I got a clump for that. But at the same time, I just said, balls to it. Not on my 14th birthday, and went round the Warrior. And we all went. We all used the Warrior then from 14, 15, 16 years of age. With all the boys, all the prostitutes, and all the sailors and seamen. And a little team of us down there. But that's my association with the docks. And I worked from there up until I was 20. 21, I got me Freeman of the Thames. But at 18, they started chasing me for the army, even though I was a full petty officer in the Sea Cadets in New Cross, in the New Cross Sea Cadet section. But I wasn't listening. When I filled the form in, and where do you want to go in service, I said anything but the army. And there must have been a comedian who read the form, because that's where he put me. So I went in handcuffs in Woolwich, picked up a rod rifle, and I was given a whacking at Woolwich. In fact, they broke one of my teeth. And then I went from there to Shepton Mallet, because I was, what's it, AOWL, what was it, absent without leave. And anyway, the first, shipped me down to Dorchester then, to in the Dorchester keep down there I was. And could I come home? It's the first time they gave me a couple of hours leave, or the first time I come straight back to London. And then the next time they caught me, they really gave me a whacking. Same place, Woolwich. And it carried on for the next 2.5 years. So instead of doing 18 months, I've done just over 2 years. I've done 2 years and 2 months in and out the nick.
In your time working on the river and in the docks, was you happy in that job?
Yeah, of course I was. I didn't know anything else from boy, man, and even when I was 10 and 11 years of age, I was answering the telephone for my father to say the ship was just past Gravesend, and it would take 2 hours to sail up the Thames. And I'd write it down, as a boy. And when my dad come home, doesn't matter what time, he would read it that the ship's just past Gravesend, he had to go to work. I mean, we was doing something like, when we was really going to town, 8 to 10 ships a day, and more, and more. I remember once upon a time when I was really going to town. That's after the war. I mean, I only just had my license. I'd done 7 ships in one day. And when I talk about ships, we're only talking about 500 tons, little Dutch coasters and people like that, you know, and Germans. We was working with the Germans then, which amazed me. The moment the hostilities stopped, so the Germans started sailing into Surrey docks. Much all the boos and cries and the shouts and hollers from the dockers, they still unloaded the ships, and the crew was asked to behave themselves and not think about it, and we're all brothers now and all this cobblers. But and then right after that, we started getting Russian ships. And when the Russian ships come over, they were all armed, and they had an armed guard on the gangway, and you had to go aboard it with a pass. But it was quite funny because I just started piloting then, and when the first Russian ships come over, after we've done our job, the master said, "We'll come up to the cabin and have a drink," you know, because that was custom. And we went up with the dock master and the harbour master. Well, we didn't have harbour master then, but he used to come along at times because one of the first Russian ships had to greet them. And dock master, chief customs officers, and all those people, and I was sitting there with them. And one of the first ships that came in served up the table with red caviar, black caviar, cheeses, stuff we'd never seen before. Of course, we scoffed all that, what with the vodka and one thing and another. Anyway, that was the first Russian ship. And then after that, you got each ship after that. We noticed that the fare got lower and lower and less and less and less. In the end of the day, you went down, you had a drop of vodka and a piece of sausage, black sausage. At but they still had armed guards on the gangway. They never let anybody. And one of the funniest Russian ships I remember is that all the crew, all the officers were women. Oh, I don't mean women as we know women. I mean, these were women, 24 and 30 odd stone bloody women. I mean, built like brick shit houses, you know, really. And long time after the war, there were still Russian ships running in here with women officers. That's the skipper, the mate, and the chief engineer. And they couldn't get rid of them because they hadn't done any wrong. And they didn't want any more women officers, but they couldn't get rid of them. Do you want to stop there? Because no, I'm just because why am I talking too fast for you?
Did you become close to the men you worked with?
Only my own men, the watermen and lightermen, because I employed them. And one time we deployed up to 48 people, subcontract, by the way, and they in turn employed us. For example, if the sergeant from Charlton had a ship coming up this end, they would give us the job. And if we had a job going down Charlton, we'd give them the job. We'd take a little commission, 10% type, you know, job. And that's the way it worked all over the river. But the dockers and the stevedores, we sort of looked down on because, well, I was very angry with them during the war, kept having all these strikes. And I think that's what really folded the docks up, in my opinion. But of course, if I talk to a docker, he'd be most irate about that. But I mean, to have a strike over who should put a plank down because it was a dill porter's job and not a docker's job, and who should put the barge alongside the ship, it was a stevedore, not a docker's job, and all this silly nonsense of, I thought, terribly babyish, and I was only a young man then.
What was your feelings about the docks closing?
Doctor, I thought it was an absolute disgrace, but I realised why. I mean, you couldn't. I mean, a little while after the war, lots and lots of Dutchmen and Germans, people like that, young men who'd served their time in the army, got their gratuity. The Dutch government and the German government were very, very kind and gave them a sort of 100% mortgage on a little tiny 500-ton coaster, engine, bridge, everything aft. And they used to load the boats up with Baltic wood just to run around because we were desperate for wood in England. And the poor buggers would get here, and probably the first time they've ever put to sea with a brand new boat, and soon to go inside the docks, they had a 6, 9, 10 week strike. I mean, it was an absolute disgrace as far as I was concerned, and a few of them blew their brains out. And the trouble was, is once they touched the ship, once they first I took the first wrappers off the wood, as it were, the boat couldn't go anywhere because they were blacklisted. Lots of boats did go elsewhere and renamed themselves and got re-registered and all the rest of it. But I thought that was one of the biggest tragedies just after the war.
What was your personal feelings about the docks launching?
Well, obviously, being an individual and being self-employed, I thought, well, fair enough. They're bound to compensate us for taking our profession away, especially 7 generations. I went to the PLA and asked them, would we get any compensation? And they said no, because we were self-employed. We were not union people. We were no union at all. We used to belong to a guild, which was called the Tugman's Guild, which had been going on for years. But we was never in the General Workers Union. They said we could join, but they never had a branch for us. And the Waterman and Company that had been going on since Charles II's time, they didn't support us. And, well, we were virtually out of a job, full stop, overnight.
Was you able to find work easily after leaving the docks?
Well, after the dock, I'd done lots of odd jobs running around, and then the income tax come along, hit me with a terrible high bill. So I thought, to get away from the income tax, I'll go down to the Labour Exchange, which is in Brunel Road, them days. And they said, what did you do? And I told them, and I had interviewed with various other people and told them. And I told them I was self-employed and that. And in their wisdom, they put me in Selfridges in the curtain department, cutting up curtains. And needless to say, I supplied all my family with curtains. But I'd done everything to get the sack from that job. I'll return to the Selfridges after lunchtime with 3 or 4 pints of beer inside me, and I was late in the morning, and but because I was smartly dressed, and I was always laughing, they called me Smiler, and because I was always laughing, they didn't want to get rid of me, and I've done everything to get the sack out of that Selfridges. I didn't start there very long, about 2 months, I suppose, and then I didn't go anymore. And then the Labour Exchange chased me, and the income tax chased me, and that was about the time we started all going abroad, all of us. Lots and lots of lightermen, lots and lots of watermen. And my first job abroad was in Kuwait as a tug master on the oil rigs. And then from there, we're going back a few years now. From there, I came back to England, and then the next job was in Nigeria. And I went there, didn't even bother to get off the plane. I saw the offices, as it were, on the thing that come round, and all what they promised us was all, malarkey, and we didn't go. So I had to turn around more or less and come back on the same plane. So, and then the job after that was in Australia, and I went from there to once again tug skipper off of Lakes Entrance. I'd done my contract there. I'd done a full 18 months there, and it was about that time, and I took my son there, and he stayed out there. He's still out there. I took him out there when he was 17, and he was getting £2.50 here in London as a young apprentice, because he was apprentice waterman, lighterman, and he went straight out there for $700 a week. I mean, £300 from £2.50, because he loved Australia. He didn't want. He's still out there. He didn't want to come back. And, anyway, I did come back eventually, and I think I'm jumping the gun. I'm getting a bit mixed up here for dates and things. But after that, I worked for a boat passenger skipper on the passenger boats up and down the Thames. And that was the only dates I can remember. That was 1951. So it must have been before I went to Arabia or Australia and all the rest of it. And I remember that because I was 21 when the Festival of Britain was on. But I didn't do much work on the Thames after that.
Do you You miss working on the river here?
Well, it's my life. I didn't know any other life. Didn't know any other life. Didn't know anything else existed. And I'd never been abroad before, and even at that time, going in the army, because I was always in the nick, so I never bothered. I never went abroad. I mean, but no, dates confuse me now. But I remember 1951 was the Festival of Britain, and I was skipper to one of the passenger boats working under a man called Captain Irving. But they were only small boats and not nothing like they are now. I think that we were full capacity. I think it was 48 passengers, top and bottom. So it shows you the size of the boat.
While we've been doing this project, we've come across instances where they've not been able to adjust to life outside of the docks after they close. They've ended up committed suicide.
Well, I've heard of it, but I don't know anybody personally. I mean, it's obviously that I don't know my exact age, but I remember when I first started going abroad, and I was something like 40 odd, and I had 2 children and adopted boy, and then that was 3 children. So I had to go and get some work somewhere, and I think you done work anywhere, decorating, painting, anything. And I still had boats, still had barges. We used to go on the Thames sometimes and pick up old rope, pick up old bits of metal. I mean, we were really hungry, and although all the people we employed and all the people, we only got 10% of their money, so we wasn't in a business in such a big way. I think when I folded up, I had the office in Ploughway. I had 4 barges, 3 motorboats, and a couple of rowboats. And when I went abroad, I just so fed up with everybody, everything else. My brother was working for me, and my uncle was working for me, and I got so fed up that I just handed the lot over to them. I never got a penny out of anybody. No compensation from nobody, nowhere.
What do you How do you think the closure of the docks has changed the in my life?
Well, it's gutted it. I mean, there's a book. Can you turn them off in a moment? I'll show you the book. They called it the fact. Oh, how did I find the docks and how did I find the Rotherhithe people after they closed the docks? Well, obviously, lots of people were lost, and they started breaking up all the community by sending the peoples out. And in those days, to see a colour man on the streets around Rotherhithe was a rarity. One of the people we used to work with, we used to call him Darky, and he was a mate of ours as a coloured bloke. In fact, he used to do some work for me. And nigger wasn't a terrible word, and we used to call it, if he was really black as coal, like a lot of stevedores, not a lot of stokers, not stevedores, stokers. They were black because they could stand the heat, and we always called them Blackie or nigger Brown or nigger Joe or whatever. And there wasn't all this friction like there is now. And you ask how it affected the docks. Well, a little while ago, I went down to the Time and Talents, and they have made a book called Fragmented Community. I mean, and that says quite a lot. How they broke up all the old families that have been here for hundreds and hundreds of years, like mine. And so, I mean, I think going into politics, but I think the Labour government done this just to break it up because the people were all together, and that's my opinion.
Do you think there's not the same community spirit?
Nowhere, no way. I mean, especially the blocks of flats that they built. You could live in a block of flat and wouldn't know the neighbour from one year to the next year. I've been in this little flat now for a year, 1 year, and these people next door have never invited me in. I've invited them in here, but we've never gone to dinner together. I've never had a beer with them. I know their first name, I don't know their surname. You take 2 doors down, I don't know him at all. And 3 doors down, I've never seen him. I know old lady, rather old lady, lives above me because she's 83 and she's one of the old family. And the people down below are coloured, only just moved in recently. But this block is supposed to be old, rather high families. This block, well, there are a lot of old names, the Whipses and the and names like that, Connors. There are, but I don't know them because you're in this cell, this unit, and it's not like the old Mayflower Street, whereby you could go along and ask for a tanner if you didn't have the gas or electricity. We was never in that situation because my father was a pilot and waterman, and he was always employed, and he was never on the dole, never had a day's out of work. He was never in hospital ever. So a big man, 6'2", my father was, and he was after the war. He contributed to put the money into the bells, to put the bells back in St Mary's, much to everybody's local disgust, because the bells started ringing again and waking everybody up Sunday morning, where it's gone on all through the war without the bells. But no, he was quite spiritually in the community. He was spiritual mindedly. No, I haven't got that right, have I? He was. He had the right ideas for the community, but unfortunately, never done us any good as a father. He never steered us right. But that's getting away from the docks. We knew all the dock masters. We knew all the customs. We knew all the officers, as it were, of the docks. But the dockers and stevedores, the only association I had with them was rowing them from the quay to the buoy, and from the buoy to the quay. Churchill, Battlebridge Tier, what's the other one there? Prince's Stairs. That was the 3 river moorings. And then we had Canada Boys, we had Albion Boys, Brunswick Boys, and we used to make sure that the men had a gangway from ship to shore, shore to ship. That included all the engineers and that's ship repairers, shipwrights, riggers, tally clerks, dockers, stevedores, whatever. We didn't have too much to do with dill porters because they were a profession on their own, and we never had one thing that I always loved is when you first went into the dock gates was the smell of pine, the smell of pine wood, and I think that'll stay with me forever. You know. Mm.
What do you think of the new developments? What they've done with Docklands now? The new.
Oh, it's a disgrace because in the very beginning, I'm standing very politically here, but I mean it is a shame because most of this land was taken up with a promise that 1/3 of it would be given to the local people. Well, that's never happened. That has never happened. We're getting families here from way out, 50 miles outside of London. So where is that from the local people? Where is that from the local communities and people? Amos Estate, taking that as a typical example, that's alongside the river, Bellamy's Wharf, near Bellamy's Wharf. I had a flat there, and they shipped us all out, told us all to move because it was going to pull it all down, and they put all the different families around the new estate around town, and lots of people got their little tiny houses for the first time ever instead of flats, and that worked out. But that was nowhere near 1/3 of the amount that was promised in the beginning. Nowhere near 1/3, and then Bellamy's Wharf, when they pulled that down and when they rebuilt Amos Estate, they got all people from all over the place, Indians, Negroid people, I mean, everywhere. Lots and lots of people from Brixton, and people just stayed away from there. And we feel very hurtful that they pushed all the Rotherhithe people away, and got a lot of different people from all over London to come here. Hence the new book I've just found called The Profile of the Fragmented Community. That's bloody true.
So there was no advantages in closing of the docks in the area.
No advantages. There was definitely no advantage. Most definitely not. Most disadvantage. Obviously, the likes of me, not only me, I mean, there were lots of individual people who had little barges and little doing their own work and up and down the Thames, and it just took it all away. It just stopped. It took some year and a half to slow down to a grindstone and to ground, slowly ground down. But it didn't take too long. I mean, we was doing one ship a week. I mean, it's one ship a week was £3. When I started work, I was getting 12 and sixpence a week, and we had to put so much into the union. And that was when I first started, and so much into the hospital fund. But 12 and 6 was my wages, and for that 12 and 6, they took about 45-hour week. I used to do that in one day, 45 hours.
Oh, that's about it, George. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, nothing at all. I appreciate you coming down, and thanks very much. But there's so much anger in me that I don't think I'm the right guy for you to talk about it, because,
Where's your anger coming from?
well, from the way we were treated. I mean, from the way we were handled in the first place, no one came down to discuss it with us that they was going to take our livelihood away after 7, 8 generations. No one discussed it with us. No one, because I don't think they knew what it was going to do themselves. I mean, I'm now in poor health. I've got cancer and one thing and another. But to go to the Waterman's Hall and the Waterman's Company, which is an old company going back to the year of Charles II, there's no support anywhere. There hasn't been anywhere because we were non-union. We were individual people, and as individual people, we had to look after ourselves. Well, thank Christ we did. But a lot of anger about the way they've treated this area and the way they've allowed a lot of strangers and foreigners to come in here just to Morris break. You go in a pub now, and it's rare that you find a man from one of the old families. They've all moved outside Dagenham and Beckingham, and Milton Keynes was a big move. A lot of people moved out to Milton Keynes, and it just broke the whole guts of the Cockney land up. Full stop.